Hi, once again I'm bringing you Ops for Shut-ins. This is part 2 of a operations for one train that is part of the schedule that I would normally have on my model railroad layout. I'm doing this because a lot of us are shut in at this time. I'm doing a lot more modeling than I would do normally. Well, I'm retired anyway, so every day is Saturday, but I'm doing some work on my layout that I needed to do, and because I don't go out and do things outside of home right now, including other model railroaders ops sessions, I thought I'd take you through one train and how it was made up, like in the last episode. And today we're going to take it out on the road and doing some switching and arriving at the other terminal. Now, my model railroad layout is a point-to-point which operates from one big yard, Minneapolis, to another big yard, Duluth. It's also got 3 branch lines on it. Well, at some future episode we'll probably get into the branch lines, but right now we're going to concentrate on the 26-foot long cantilevered 2-foot wide main line that I have against the wall here in my basement. And we're going to go through 3 major cities, one of which we've got some work to do according to my switch list here. And again, I use the Ship It software, which I've been using for I would say at least 20, if not longer, years. In the previous episode, we made up the train over here in the Duluth yard, and I brought the train out and set it up at a point which, hopefully before the end of 2019, I will have my signals working again. But right now I've just got 2 red push pins over here that indicate the yard limit. So when I do start ops sessions, before I get installed the signals, I will have a place for people to realize that it's a yard limit and they shouldn't proceed unless they get further instruction. Here I have the RSC2 locomotive, number 371. And my 2 boxcars, which will need to be set out at Rice Lake, which is, as I said in the previous episode, about 20 feet that way. And there's some other work I have to do there, but I'll take it up once we get this train out of Dodge, so to speak, actually out of Minneapolis. I'm using my Digitrax DT400R main throttle, and since I started recording, this thing has gone to sleep, so I'm going to wake it back up again by plugging it into a nearby panel. This is a simplex system. Digitrax does have a duplex system which came afterwards, but this is simplex, which means that the signals go from here to the receiver in one direction only. The main control unit can't feed signals back to this, only in one direction. So I send the signals back to the receive unit, which is up on the wall back here, and it controls the locomotive. So what I'm going to do now is take the locomotive out, and it's going to be passing next through Barron, which is to my left right here. The train proceeds behind 2 of the major industries here in Barron, Barron Storage and Jerome Foods. And it passes by the depot in Barron. Since there is no work in Barron today, the train will continue through. But I'm going to stop it for a moment just to cover a few things on how the Barron area is set up. I have a 2-car yard here, another tract that serves Jerome Foods, which is a poultry producing plant. Barron storage I use as kind of a warehouse and a freight exchange area. The depot is a kit from Monroe Models, and it's actually the Eden Prairie, Minnesota depot, Sioux Line depot, and I shortened it a bit to fit into an available space on my last layout, and it exists on my new layout right here in Barron. Barron also has two other industries on the far end, a grain elevator, Fiorina Mills, and an abbreviated building that I call compressed manufacturing. It's because it was one of these foam injected buildings that I painted, but I had to cut down lengthwise to fit it in the space in my previous layout. And what it has in the doorway there is mirrors that make it look a lot bigger than it actually is inside. It's kind of like a little mini scene, and it's based on an idea that John Allen had some decades ago. Well, since we don't have any work here and I don't see any orders to be picked up, I'm going to continue on. It's passing behind Purina Chow's, which also covers up one of my servo motors, or actually two, that are in the area. You may find this a bit odd, but this is a river roadbed right now, and there's no bridge here currently. That will eventually be finished off when I do the scenery. Right now it's just going to have to suffice with crossing over that bridge. Here is the Purina Chow's, here's compressed manufacturing, where I had to cut this building right in half here, and here's the doorway. You had a close-up of it, and I don't have my interior lighting connected yet, but this, if you look in here, the mirrors that I have on either side make it look a lot larger. Here are my turnout switch controls here, controlling the 5 servo switch machines in the Barron area. And as we go further down the layout here, you'll see Rice Lake has 3 turnouts. Fortunately, I only have 8 powered turnouts, and that's the limit on one Octo 3 controller, which is manufactured by Tan Valley. While we're waiting for the train to come in, you see a couple of industries along the backdrop here. On the far left, that gray structure is part of Red Cedar Mills. And the one to the right is Younger Stove and Range. The Younger Stove and Range here is a scratch-built building done by a friend of mine some years ago, based on a footprint I sent him. And it's one of the nicest structures I've got on my layout. The depot here is a Sioux Line second class depot, which I scratch built from original plans from the Sioux Line Historical and Technical Society. This is Lcl Transfer and Storage, which existed on my previous layout, and that's just a transfer building for freight. Off to the right here, you may be able to see the 3 switches for my turnouts. One that goes to a turnout to the back track here, which goes off behind a backdrop behind me here to 2 of my 3 branch lines. This one goes to Ashland, representing Ashland, Wisconsin, and Reserve, which represents Reserve, Wisconsin, which was actually the northern terminus of the Rice Lake, Dallas, and Menominee back in the early part of the 20th century. We have tracks out front here. This represents the yard at Rice Lake, and set-offs for a couple of industries that are kind of virtual right now. This track here is for the Rice Lake Lumber Complex, which is in the process of being built, which will sit back here. And just off to my right here, the track goes through the backdrop to my branch lines. So we're going to do a little switching here today. I'll put my throttle in the carrier here and take a look at my switch list, at least carefully this time. I made a mistake the last time when I was making up the train in the Minneapolis yard. Alright, we have to pick up one car, which is the Gory and Defeated 8409 boxcar, which is sitting at LCL. And we need to set out these two boxcars at Frankfurt Lumber, which is going to be on this track here. So what do I have here? I've got to do a runaround because Frankfurt is a facing point industry, and I've got a small runaround track here. So let's see, what's the best way of doing this? Every switchman has a different way of arranging a switching move, so I'm just going to wing it in the best way I think. So first of all, I'm going to disconnect my caboose. Pull forward a little bit. Now I've got to clear this turnout here. So I'll go over and flip the toggle which controls this little servo motor here. Eventually this servo motor will be covered up with some structure that I haven't designed yet. Alright, we're going to back those two boxcars into the passing siding. And uncouple them. Bring our engine out. Go back and realign my turnouts. Bring my engine back. Now I'm going to have to flip two turnouts here. This one within the yard is a manual turnout, but on the main line I have a powered one there. And so we're going to go forward, pick up those two cars, and set them out over here. Align this turnout again. And bring the train in to the Frankfurt track. That track does serve double duty as part of the Rice Lake yard. So now I'm going to set this down in my holder and cut off these two cars. I'm going to back up now and drop off my caboose and then go after that gory and defeated boxcar that's sitting over there at LCL Transfer and Storage. Make sure all my turnouts are aligned. Now back up and go pick up the lone boxcar at LCL Transfer and Storage. Before we get too far along in the process, I want to double check my switch list again. And occasionally what happens with the software, there may be some cars within the yard area that need to be moved from one spot to another. And I have to make sure I double check my switch list because I don't want to pick something up and take it all the way into the terminal yard and then find out later that I should have just moved it within the area here. But this does say I pick it up and I don't really set it out anywhere in Rice Lake. It's an empty box, so it must have just unloaded some freight. I'm going to back out onto the main. Reconnect my caboose. When I begin operations again, I also have passenger operations, and that allows different trains to meet at certain locations. I will have a passenger train, a mainline passenger train, coming in at a certain time, and the branch line passenger train coming down from Ashland will also be stopped here so that they can exchange passengers. Then the Ashland passenger train will pick up an express reefer here and head on towards Minneapolis. The other train will be heading towards Duluth, in which it'll end up there. So we need to double check everything we got going here. Although I don't have a train order signal here, eventually I'd like to have one. But what I'm going to do is have the engineer go in and double check with the agent to make sure that there aren't any other orders that the engineer should be aware of. I do use Form 19s that I've made up for my layout, and that's something easily done using Microsoft Word or some other type of word processor. And occasionally I will attach those to the switch list, and when a particular train gets to a location, they'll have to execute that order that's on the Form 19. So now we found out from the agent that there isn't any further work that needed to be done, and so we'll continue on to Duluth. I'm going to bring the train into the yard switch lead on this side of the yard. This is a kind of a mirror image of the Minneapolis yard. This is the Duluth area. It has several industries. As I'm bringing this in, I'll describe some of the industries. And again, I'm using virtual industries. In the case of a couple, they only exist as yard tracks here. This one here is a freight lead for the freight house here. This is an open back freight house that a story I wrote up once and appeared in the NMRA magazine. The second set of tracks here are industries that used to exist at Wheeler on my previous layout and Menominee on my last layout. And right now they're just going to be a track, a single track. And the third track here is a track that is used for interchange work. With Ship It, I designate industries, and some can be virtual and some can be real. I don't have enough room here for buildings. I may at some point put some buildings here in this spot, but it gives you, or gives me, the opportunity to send cars beyond the layout. Now, on some people's layouts, you could have cars going into, let's say, a box or an off-road drawer or something like that. Here, they exist, or they get sent to tracks that are what I call virtual industries. Right now I pulled a train in here, and I'm going to get my yard switcher out, which is another DRS 441,000, and pull off that Gorian defeated car, which is, before I get too far, I've got to change the page. Let me connect up first. All right. Second page. Duluth. Okay, Duluth has got some interesting work to do. But once a train is in yard limits here, or over in Minneapolis where this train originated, it's up to the yard master and the yard switcher to carry out any instructions. As far as operations are concerned, the train that I brought in, train 926, has completed its run. Typically what will happen, depending on the yard master here, the yard master may direct the road crew to take the road engine, and hustle it back to the engine terminal, which is going to be right over here. You can see about 5 different locomotives sitting here. Some yard masters like to do that work themselves. Others need the help, and they have the road crew move it. Being that we've got DCC here, we've got 2 different throttles, and we can control each engine separately. First thing is that 8409 is going to be, that boxcar is going to have to be set out in the Belknap yard, which is designated by these 2 tracks, these 3 tracks here. Right now there's only 3 cars in that particular yard track. So we'll set that out over there. Let me set my paperwork down. Eventually, and what I used on my last layout, I had clipboards, and I hung the clipboards from the side of the layout with the paperwork on it. And I found out that guys were constantly dropping them, and I suggested using a lanyard. put around your neck in a little clip, and it would be this way, so that you can look at your switch list and just let it drop and it would hang right here. And that seemed to work better. Since there's nobody else here and I own the layout, I'm just going to set it on top of these boxcars temporarily. Alright, we've got to move both that caboose and this goring defeated boxcar. Since I posted this on YouTube, somebody asked where I got these uncouplers. This is a Rix product. That's R-I-X, named after the owner, guy that developed it, Rick Rideout. And it's a very nice uncoupler, and I like it. I prefer it over pencils and fingers and pokers and plastic ones, because it works for me. Alright, we're going to back that out of there. And we're going to put that car into this yard track here. And uncouple it there. In this yard, my caboose track, because I do have more tracks on this side, is way over there. So we're going to look and see if we can fit that down there. Again, here's my reach factor. This is 3 feet across here. My reach factor is only normally out to there, but I can reach all the way to the other end. I don't like operators trying to reach across like this, because you know what happens? They come back and they elbow something and knock cars over. So that's why when I made this 3 feet, I made sure that people could get around to the other side. We'll see how that works in actual practice. Alright, back this out of here. Now I could get over there a couple of different ways. I could zigzag over there, or I could go back and take another passing siding, which is what I'll do. This is a plug-in throttle, not a radio throttle. Make sure everything is lined to go down this switch lead and put the car down in the caboose track, which is on the far end. Now in the case of a regular operating session, what I'd be doing, or what would be happening now, is the yardmaster would probably tell the road crew to take the caboose over and put it away into the caboose track themselves. And save the yardmaster time, because sometimes trains will come in here that will be 8 cars long. And let me uncouple this. I'm not sure how much of this is going to appear on the video, but it's kind of hard to look at the back of the camera at the same time I'm recording it. As I said, depends on the yardmaster what he or she could get away with the road crew. And with an 8-car train, the incoming consist is going to be a lot more complex. Now, before I do anything else, let me look at what this switch list says. I've got a couple of things to do. I've got to pick a car out of the Belknap yard here in Duluth and move it over to Knox Doors, which is in Wheeler. So it's got to come out of this track. Not go into this track. And then, while I'm here, I've got to also take this car and move it back into the yard. In both cases, they're empty. So let's take a look at where the 44192 is. 44192 is down here. So I think what's best for me to do before I get any further is to get this road engine out of here. So let me back the yard switcher up and bring him down into the yard here and just get this road engine, not road switcher. I call it a switcher because at one time on my previous layout it was a switch engine doing yard work. It's since been promoted to road duty. Now that's going full speed there. I got the throttle wide open. As I said in the previous version of this video, I like to keep the engines programmed at a slow speed, especially in yard duty. Alright, since I've been standing here yakking, my road throttle has gone to sleep, so I have to plug it back in. That's a feature of Digitrax throttles, that after a period of time, because they have batteries in them, it'll go into a power save mode. So let's get engine 371 out of town here. Actually, not out of town. And just a little electrical interruption there. It's something I'm going to have a look at. One of the things that I like about having operation sessions is that it will always point out where your layout needs work, whether it be electrical, mechanical, design. And I'm finding out by doing some of these short-term ops sessions where the layout still needs some work in its early construction. But like they say, model railroad is never done, and this one won't be probably as done as my previous layout. But then again, my previous layout I was working on for 25 years. Alright, now, while this is coming down the switch lead, I'm going to flip this turnout. Again, I can reach. Yeah, let's see, where are we going to put that engine? I'm going to put that over here. Okay. Clear the turnout. Now you can imagine running 16 to 19 trains during an op session. So at times this yard and the other yard are very busy places. Alright, now there's a couple of things that I ask my operators to do. First of all, turn the lights off and dispatch the locomotive. That means to disconnect it from the control. Okay? It's dispatched so that we don't have creeping locomotives. I'm going to flip this turnout here. The other thing that I like about Pico turnouts is that they're power routing. So if I flip it for this track instead of this track, it cuts off the power to this track. That is very helpful if you do it either by turnout or by an insulated rail joiner with a switch. When you have sound equipped locomotives, it doesn't draw as much current then and doesn't put as big a load on your main control, your control box. It's something I've always observed, and right now I don't have, I think 3 or 4 sound locomotives on the layout. As most model railroaders, I've got more locomotives than I have room to run them. So we're done with that locomotive. We're going to go down here now with the switch engine, and now I can turn the throttle here, and switch engine isn't going to move because I've got a power routing turnout here, and now it should move. Except that got to keep an eye on which turnouts I've got thrown. Okay, I've got to pick up 44192. And bring it back, and it's got to go on this track. But hey, we've got an issue here. This car has got to be set out here, but it's on the front of the locomotive, so I've got to do a runaround. So let's pull out. I'm going to line that, drop that car there. And I'm going to come around and pick that car up at the other end of the locomotive. We're going to do our little runaround move here. We're going to back that car out of there, and we're going to come down on this lead right here. Sure these turnouts are aligned properly. All right. So the first line here says pick up this 44192. And place it at Knox doors, which is on this track. But then I have to look one step ahead, and it says CMO Boxcar 1751 has to come out of there. So let's go in and pull that one out first. We're going to set that over here. But then I'm going to have to do the reverse runaround move in order to get that yellow and green boxcar on the other end of the locomotive. This yellow and green CMO, or Chicago Northwestern, boxcar was issued, I believe, back in 1974 by the Wisconsin Southeastern Division of the NMRA. I think I was one of the first division cars from any division that I bought. I was a member of that division back then, but could never really go to many of the meetings, which they had on Sundays, because I worked weekends. Now we've set out the boxcar at Knox Doors. Knox Doors manufactures wooden doors of various types. And so they're going to need an empty box, which we just dropped off. In order to load up those doors. The one that we're removing here now and setting back in the yard was probably loaded with lumber. And you need lumber to make wooden doors. Alright, we are going to set that one there. We're going to uncouple the car there, right here, and we're going to use a runaround to get on the other side of the car. Make sure my tracks are aligned here. That one, this one I have to change. Don't want my circuit breakers clicking at me. Oh. You know, for some reason, I'm not taking advantage of this thing. I tend to do that on occasion. Alright, now we're going to go back and get on the other side of that car. There you have it. That's one train, start to finish, over 2 episodes of this video. Now, you can see how you need more than just a couple of operators, because over that period of time, I think that actual time that it went from one end to the other, did all the switching, was probably a good half hour real time, if not longer. And The yardmaster here has to keep on top of things. Take a look. The yardmaster will have a time schedule that he or she needs to abide by to make sure that these trains get out at certain times. If they don't go out on the right time, that yardmaster over there in Minneapolis may be sending a train out that is dropping off a car that this train may need to pick up, or vice versa. And one train may not be there in time to get the car. So it's important that they keep track of time. And that's why we use a fast clock. Passenger trains absolutely have to keep time because they're first-class trains and they have priority over all of the other trains. On my previous layout, at times, my operators were so efficient that I was able to throw in what I call extra trains, some extra work to be done en route. But that's the first train that would normally run on the layout. It's scheduled to leave at about 12:15 a.m. And so I'm hoping to do some more of these, give you an idea of how I have them made up, and the various places that they've got to switch. So I hope you've enjoyed it. I'll look for some of my other videos on my YouTube channel, and if you're on Facebook, look for the Rice Lake, Dallas, and Menominee Railroad. Thank you.